Hi, good day, everyone. Um, I have the pleasure of having Dr. Samantha Miller today. She's a biotech executive and a current chief operating officer of Karma Exotechnologies. It's a company on a mission to revolutionize women's health, starting with one of medicine's most persistent challenges, which is preterm birth. She has 15 years of experience in building scientific, operational, and strategic systems across biotech. And at Karma, she is leading efforts to develop exosome-based therapeutics, engineered extracellular vesicles, exosomes that can deliver anti-inflammatory signals directly to the maternal-fetal interface, where dysregulated inflammation is a key trigger for preterm labor. Dr. Miller, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to talk about this.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining and accepting my invitation. When we connected over on LinkedIn, it was a pretty cool story. I saw I was researching exosomes, and I happened to stumbled on your one of your studies, and I
Yeah.
found on LinkedIn. I sent you a connection request, and then here we are, talking about exosomes in
hmm
birth. So I appreciate it. So, we're going to pretty much take over, talk about, I would love to learn more about your background, how you got into, using exosomes in preterm birth. What is preterm birth? Like we know what it is, but what causes it? Why does it occur? Why it's so difficult to prevent? The history, what are current treatments out there, right? If any, right? The roles of the exosomes in pregnancy and the therapy. What is your mission, scientific vision, right? And karmas as well. The leadership and the innovation in women's health. Like, what does your role look like? We're going to go a little bit about operational and regulatory. What are some challenges there? Ethical responsibility as well. I think that's a very good one. And then some closing remarks. I know it's a lot up there, but yeah, please, give us a little bit of your background and how you kind of got into this.
Yeah. Like most people, I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up,
Yeah.
but I loved science. Somehow I got into science uh, early enough to be able to build a career off of it. Um, Before I went into grad school, so I was a late bloomer when it came to deciding, did I want to go to grad school? Did I want to just, go into the trenches and stay in the lab and like work my way up like everybody does? Um, I worked at a company called Boston IVF. I was hired to create a needle free approach to hormone testing. So I don't know if you know anything about in vitro fertilization, but the women undergo a multitude of blood draws every cycle. So cycles range between 24 to 30 something days. And throughout those, basically that month, they can get drawn anywhere from 2 to 5 times a week, monitoring their progesterone, their hormones, their estrogen. And all these hormones tell the doctors, okay, what do I need to do? How do I need to tweak their treatment to make sure that when we do some sort of implantation, we can, optimize their chances of getting pregnant. But needles are a form of stress. I don't know about you, but I hate getting my blood drawn. I hate needles. And so they hired me to develop a test. And so instead of using, blood, I developed a test to use spit. And so these women would spit into tubes, and I would run a test to see what their hormone levels were.
Yeah.
And um, after about 3 years of working there, I did the clinical trial. I set up the QC. I set everything up from scratch. Um, I decided that, you kind of hit your glass ceiling, and I was like, if I really want to make a difference, I want to go to grad school, and I want to get my PhD, and I want to further studies in hormone treatments and see how I can help these women get pregnant faster and quicker and with less stress and make it more accessible because it's so expensive. Um, and unfortunately, when I did get into graduate school, the school I decided to go to, they had just closed their IVF clinic. Like right when I got there, they had closed it down. So I had to pivot, and that's what we do as scientists. So I pivoted and I got into a lab where they were studying pregnancy and trying to understand the mechanisms that go from, how does the fetus tell the mother, or how does the mother tell the fetus that it's ready to come out? Like, how does that happen? How does labor even get initiated? Because at the time, we didn't really understand what was going on um, inside the mother when it comes to the communication between the fetus and the mother. And so that's where it started. My mentor was so passionate about what he was talking about that I was hooked the first time I met with him. I was like, I need to study this. This has to be what I go into. And that's where it started.
Wow. That's pretty good. The fact that you had to pivot, not that you had to pivot, but you learned a good that was a life lesson, right? And in life, life
Exactly.
is not perfect, right? And so having to pivot, um, you know,
Hmm.
in your career and what you want to do, that makes us. I strongly believe that that's what makes us strong. That's what builds character, right? So good. So thank you for sharing that. Um, so we I know what preterm birth is, right? In simple terms, a baby that is born, I would say, in basic terms, how I interpret it is a baby that is born before 9 months, I would say, right? In simple terms, like what, how do you define that? What is it? And I know,
Yeah.
and when does it occur and why does it occur? Right?
Yes. Okay. So preterm birth is clinically defined as birth before 37 weeks of gestation.
Okay.
So a normal pregnancy can range from 37 weeks to, oh, term pregnancy. 37 is the earliest, and then you can go post-term too. You can go to, we don't like mothers going too much longer than 2 weeks post-term.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
so if a baby is born preterm, essentially it's born before 37 weeks.
Okay.
But even within that, there's a gradient. So um, the earliest we can save a baby if it's born too soon is about 24 weeks. Um, and that is very early preterm. The lungs haven't really developed, the brain hasn't. There's so much development that's missing but we're able to save it. Before our CSO, actually, Lauren Richardson, she was a preterm baby. She was born about a month early, but her mother had gone through challenges getting pregnant, staying pregnant, and back, I'm not going to say in that day, but before we made these sort of um, uh, advances in healthcare advances, 28 weeks wasn't early. It was too early for us to save a baby. And so the fact that we're able to save a child at 24 weeks does speak really well to the advances that have occurred. But it would be really great if we could keep that baby inside, because that's the safest, the best place for it to grow and develop healthy and happy. And that's the goal of, Karma and anyone who's really working on preterm birth. There's so many dedicated scientists who are working on this problem. And the longer we can keep the baby inside the uterus, the better. So, preterm birth, before 37 weeks of gestation. Why does it happen? Well, that's a very complicated question.
Yeah.
Preterm birth is what we call multifactorial. There isn't one underlying cause because there's so many factors that play into a woman's pregnancy. Um, Things that she can control, like does she smoke, or is she stressed, and things that she can't really control. Does she have an infection, and things like that? Or does she have um, a short cervix? Because that can also contribute to preterm birth. And so there are all these factors that go into whether or not a pregnancy can go to term or whether it happens to end a little early. And so scientists are working really hard to try to take all of that information and find and prevent it. And that's the challenge. That's why preterm birth is so difficult to prevent. There's no one biomarker we can look at that says, I know she's going to deliver preterm, other than, well, she's delivered preterm in her previous pregnancy, so her chances of delivering preterm this time are also elevated.
Is that a fact?
Hmm.
Interesting. So yeah, so you explained, there's so many different factors, external factors, things that, you guys can control and cannot control, right?
Hmm.
So, which makes it challenging, and that's why I'm sure karma exists, and that's why scientists exist to look at that, right?
Yeah.
So, what are from preterm birth is anything before 37 weeks. I remember my wife would always say, I would say months, and she's like, no, it's
Hmm.
X amount of weeks.
Weeks.
Okay, like come out with the calculator, divide it so I can know what.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, so what are I'm sure there are treatments or there's things that are out there to help, right, preterm birth.
Hmm.
So what is out there to help women?
Not much, actually. So preterm birth is challenging because you're treating two patients. You're treating the mother and you're treating the fetus. And that's where the super complication comes in because what's going to pass the placenta? What is going to harm the fetus? And so uh, the most common treatment right now, depending on where she is in gestation or where she is in her pregnancy and how old the fetus is, um, there are some things that you can do, and what the underlying cause is, uh, and if her amniotic sac has ruptured or if it's still intact. There's again, even with
Different.
treatment,
Yeah.
multifactorial. So right now there are these things called tocolytics, and what they do is they go in, labor's already started, tocolytics go in and they essentially block labor from progressing, but it's very temporary. It doesn't treat the underlying cause, and it can only work for about, best case scenario, 48 hours. 2 days is enough for if your baby is really underdeveloped. They'll put in some steroids to help with the lung development so that it can survive outside the uterus. And that's all the tocolytics are really there for. There are other things that you can do, but that goes into a whole nother world of non-therapeutic treatments. Um, so if the like I mentioned a short cervix, so there's like a cervical cerclage to help keep things closed so that stuff doesn't leak out. Um, and then there's also if the underlying cause has to do with a bacterial infection, then they'll give her antibiotics to block the infection, but the path to labor has already been started, right? So when there's an infection, you don't want the fetus to stay in there if you're not going to deal with the bacteria or the inflammation, because you don't want your baby to stay in a very inflammatory environment because that will also cause damage.
Interesting. Okay, so it seems that there's no treatment. So because you said that there's so many different factors that causes preterm,
Hmm.
there's really no, I mean, also you don't know if it's going to be a preterm birth, right? So then you only treat it once.
Once it
Once it,
starts.
okay, got it. Okay, so
Hmm.
obviously testing and making sure that the mother is healthy and things like that will
Hmm.
prevent that. Obviously, you can help with that, but not essentially treat treat it. Okay, good. Okay,
Yeah,
so that makes total sense. And then so there's really no other than I forgot the name of the treatment that you said.
tocolytics.
Tocolytic.
They there was one. So there's a hormone in pregnancy called progesterone, and progesterone is, in and of itself, it is anti-inflammatory. And I don't know if I talked about this yet. The process of labor is a very inflammatory process. There is so much inflammation going on because you need to clear the body of these tissues. And so, for that process to continue, um, the progesterone molecule will decrease in concentration, and your estrogen, which is a pro-inflammatory molecule, will increase. And so the idea was, okay, well, if we give these women progesterone, it's anti-inflammatory. Labor is an inflammatory process. Progesterone is present throughout pregnancy, so let's give them more to help keep their pro-inflammatory mediators lower, with progesterone acting as an anti-inflammatory mediator. Unfortunately, that went into clinical trial, and they just did not see any difference between using progesterone and not using progesterone. So that was eventually taken off the market. So we're again back to treatments that were developed 30 plus years ago, and there hasn't been anything since other than this progesterone that was just taken off the market.
Wow. Um, why do you think, it's not looked at? Like, why do you think there's not many people trying to like find a treatment or do this? Why do you think that?
It's I hate to toot our own horn, but it's hard.
Hmm,
It's so challenging. You need something that's going to cross the placenta. You need to understand the mechanisms that initiate labor. And
interesting.
for a long time, we thought it was the mother saying, okay, baby, time to go. But my lab specifically, I worked in Dr. Ram Kumar Menon's lab, and he was a pioneer in this field of study because he was always pushing the boundaries. He was always trying to take what people understood and look at it from every angle. And he was the one who introduced me to exosomes. And what his hypothesis was, which turns out based on our research that we've done to be correct, is the fetus communicates to the mother in multiple ways. But one of the significant ways is through extracellular vesicles or exosomes, which we'll get into, but they're small um, little packages of information that are released from every cell pretty much in our bodies. I don't think I've heard of any cell that is not producing exosomes.
Yeah.
And they're little delivery systems that take a snapshot of what's happening in that cell. Is it happy? Is it dying? Is it inflamed? Is it aging? And those signals get travel from the fetus to the mother. And they're constantly going to the mother and telling her, giving her status updates on how the fetus, how the tissues surrounding it, how the amniotic fluid is doing throughout pregnancy. And as you get closer and closer to term, those signals become more and more inflammatory. And that is what pushes the woman over the edge into labor. So then the muscle that helps push the baby out, the myometrium, that gets activated. And then your cervix, well, before that gets activated, your cervix is also undergoing a flattening and a widening that happens. And it's all in preparation of pushing a baby out. Um, and so those signals we have shown in a mouse. So the mouse gestation is only 20 days. And if you take the day before labor, if you take those signals and you inject it into a mouse on day 15, you can induce labor. So we have found that those signals with a really good confidence are what pushes the mother over into a laboring state. And those signals come from the placenta and the amniotic sac. They have a lifespan. They're supposed to survive for 40 weeks and then they're done with their job and they're like, okay, I'm done, I'm out. And what happens is you see this gradual aging process. Similar to humans, there's an aging process that happens with these tissues. And those aging signals start with less inflammation and then they grow and become very, very, very inflammatory. And when those signals get to the myometrium, they start that pathway again and they start that roll into labor.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. So yeah, you touched a little bit about the inflammatory pathway, and then exosomes. What are so yeah? So exosomes is a very hot topic. I would say
Mm-hmm.
entire regenerative medicine in the medicine field. Everyone
Mm-hmm.
knows exosomes, and as I started learning myself, what are exosomes? And I just learned and realized. I would say a couple months ago, recently, that almost every cell in the body secretes exosomes, right? So when I see, everyone talking about exosomes now, it's like, okay, from where is it derived from, right? So I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
very important topic to know. And then you
Right.
also hit a very important topic as well that I'm learning as I talk to other scientists like yourself, that if exosomes are bad, or there's certain bad, they're going to signal or send those bad packages to somewhere else. So which is huge because we don't want those bad signals, or it's so you explained a little bit about what are exosomes, right? And so how are you guys using it in karma? Like, where is it derived from? And how, yeah, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so like I said, exosomes, they create a snapshot of what your cell looks like when that exosome was created, because in order for an exosome to be produced, they go through there's a relatively complicated process, but then they create this. They're created by budding inside. It's called an endosome, and the exosomes are created by budding into the endosome. And so your endosome is this little package that has a bunch of little exosomes just sort of inside. And so what the exosomes will contain will be cytoplasm from the cell. They'll contain proteins, nucleic acids, so DNA, RNA. People are looking at microRNAs.
Hmm.
They'll contain lipids. And then they have, outside on the membrane, they'll also have proteins that kind of tell it where it needs to go. And that's what's really exciting about exosomes is you can modify your exosomes to go to a specific tissue. You can tell it, okay, well, because it has this protein, it needs to go to the liver or it needs to go to the intestines. And you can make it go wherever you want it to go as long as you have a protein that signals the exosome that that's where it needs to go. And that's why exosomes are so amazing. Well, that's one of the many reasons why exosomes are so amazing.
Interesting. And so where are the exosomes? Because remember, we talked about how almost every cell in the body secretes exosomes. So where
Mhm.
are exosomes that you guys are using in these therapies? Where are they derived from?
They're actually not derived from a person. They're
Okay.
derived from a cell line. So,
What is that
so,
cell line? What, like,
yeah. Cell lines are essentially uh, cells that live forever. They've gone through a process to what we call immortalize them. And so the cell lines are really big in research because they're genetically identical. And it makes it so that you can redo experiments with high consistency and reproducibility. And so we're using exosomes derived from a very popular cell line called human embryonic kidney cells, or HEK for short. They're HEK 293 cells. And these cells are great. What you can do with immortalized cells is you can change their DNA by introducing um, what we call transfection. So you can transfect these cells, introduce a new chunk of DNA that tells the cell to do something. And so you can transfect your cell to have that protein of interest on the exosome. You can transfect your cell to contain a certain molecule of interest. You can people have been using transfection for decades. It's not a new type of science, but how people use it has evolved over time.
interesting. Okay, so the reason why I ask where are they derived from, like, so from my research and learning all of this, you have obviously autologous, derived stem exosomes, right?
Hmm.
And you can get it from blood, from wherever we can get it. But then we also have allogenic exosomes, right, from a donor, right? So
Right,
are these? So you said that they're human embryonic kidney cells, right? Heck.
right,
So are they from the same person or they are donating? That's
right. So these hex cells came from years, decades ago. They came from a single donor. And if I remember correctly, please don't quote me on this, but they are not, they are not what we would call, they're a cell line, which means that they can just reproduce forever. Um, and they stay the same as they, not reproduce, but as they grow and divide.
okay.
Um, so you can go to a company and say, I want to purchase HEC 293 cells, and they'll ship you a little vial of 1 million cells, and you'll start. an entire worlds of experiments with just that one.
Okay. No worries at all. Okay. So we were chatting about the live cell, the cell lines. You were
Cell
going in.
lines, yes. So
Yes.
this, yes, so cell lines are immortalized, you can purchase them.
Okay.
What you're taught, you also mentioned autologous where you get them from a donor. Um, we have, so we call those primary cells because they're coming from a live person. They've gone through no changes to make them live forever. They're just regular human or mouse or whatever animal cells. And once you're done with them, you can't regenerate them. You can't grow them again because
Okay.
they're a one and done type of
Okay.
cell line.
Interesting. Okay. So these
Hmm.
these are coming from a lab. These exosomes. Is that correct?
Exosomes, so the exosomes that Karma produces, yes, they're coming from a lab. They're coming from a human cell line, and we can program them to contain whatever we want.
Interesting. Okay. So so you guys are essentially engineering them. Interesting. That
Yeah.
is, yeah, wow. Okay. That is something that I, usually from, from what I've been learning is either autologous or a donor cell, right? So this is actually
Hmm.
super interesting. And then so are they safer than, using autologous, or, how is that looking when it comes to like ethical reasons or anything, in that nature?
Well, so when you're looking at safety, the great thing about these exosomes is that so the issue with safety is they create like your body responds to them somehow. But
Okay.
exosomes, they don't cause those problems. They're considered safe because your body doesn't respond to them. Your immune system doesn't respond to them unless your exosome is targeting, unless you want your body to respond to them. So what we're using is these exosomes because they can cross the blood-brain barrier and they can cross the placenta barrier. We're using them because they can get to where the inflammation is happening, and then they can release their drug product and reduce the inflammation and make it so that those signals, the underlying signals, remember we talked about the fetus sends the signals to the mother that it's ready to come out, or the aging process for those tissues can happen too soon or too quickly. And so those signals will go to the mother and cause preterm birth. And so we can tell those signals, yeah, you're not, let's block some of this inflammation. Let's calm it down a little bit. We'll extend pregnancy. And we've been able to show in animal models that if we inject these mice who are undergoing preterm labor with these exosomes, we can rescue pregnancy by multiple days in a mouse, which is the equivalent of 3 to 4 weeks in a human. So if you'll remember right now, tocolytics, 48 hours is what you're getting.
Okay.
We can get 3 to 4 weeks in a human
Wow.
with these exosomes.
Interesting. Oh, and so my next question was going to be like, when does karma and when does your exosome therapy come into play, right? So you kind of
Right.
answered that. So essentially, someone, a mother, is obviously in labor. They go to,
Hmm.
and that's when you guys obviously intervene
Yes.
using that therapy, and then
Yeah.
you be, are you able to share with us kind of like what that therapy kind of looks like, right? Like a mother that is, going into labor, and kind of like how you guys are able to treat her and help her.
So in our animal studies, we've been doing just injections, intravenous injections. So if she's on an IV, we would just pump it right into her. And then those exosomes would go directly to the target. And that
Wow.
is the we call it the maternal fetal interface. And it's the place where the fetal tissues meet the maternal tissues. Um, and it's a very um, what is it, active environment, right? There's a lot going on there. And if our exosomes can target that area.
Interesting. So
Hmm.
you guys, you mentioned a couple of times, you guys in clinical trials right now? Are you guys in the process? Where are you guys in that right now?
Our company is we just established it in July, I think is when
Yeah.
the paperwork was done. And I only started in August. So we're very, very new, but this research has been ongoing for so long that we have all of the preclinical work done. We are in the process of finding investors. I don't know if you know this, but to go through a clinical trial, it is so expensive, so expensive. And so for us to get this drug out, not only is it going to take many, many, many years to get it to even put it in a woman who is suffering from preterm birth or preterm labor, but the amount of money that's going to go into it for that to happen is ridiculous. And so now we're in the fundraising stage of trying to get people to, one, be passionate and excited like we are about preterm birth and the need to delay it. I don't know if you saw, but March of Dimes grades countries based on their preterm birth capabilities and and their preterm birth rates. And the United States got a D plus again, and that's not a very good score. And we know, like I know that this drug can help patients and it can help delay preterm birth and give that fetus the time it needs to truly develop. Because yes, preterm birth is terrible, and we're able to save the babies now earlier than ever. But the challenge is even after birth that that baby is going to go through the financial burden that it's going to have on the mother, the family, and the stress and the emotional toil that is going to that is going to happen to the mother and the family. If we can fix even some of that with just this drug, that would be incredible. But it's going to take time and money to get there.
Yeah, a lot. Um, so you did mention a little bit about how does Karma's exosomes compare to I can't remember the name of the
Tocolytics,
totalytics. Yeah. So
tocolytics.
tocalytics.
Yes,
Tocalytics. Thank you.
tocolytics.
Tocalytics. So you mentioned a little bit regarding the time. So tocalytics, I believe you said 48 hours,
Hmm.
right? That it
Yeah,
buys some time rather than karma. You mentioned about
3 to 4 weeks.
3 to 4 weeks. That's a long time. Other than those two compare, like those two, the time frame comparing, is there any other benefits rather using exosomes than tocolytics treatments?
Well, yeah, tocolytics. There are side effects to it. They can cause issues in the fetus itself too, and so there becomes this trade-off of keeping the baby in there for another 2 days with the knowledge that there are going to be some complications with it, having taken these drugs, or do we let it deliver early and then, all this time it has to spend in the neonatal um, intensive care unit, right? So there's a trade-off. And the doctors, the clinicians take those, take in all the information about why the woman is going into preterm labor, what is causing it from their understanding, and what are the risks for using the tocolytics versus not using them. But with exosomes, we haven't gone through clinical trials yet, so I can't say for certain that it's going to be, 4 weeks and it's so much safer. All of
Yeah.
our preclinical data that has been done in animal models shows that one, they're safe. There's no, um, there's nothing that happens to the fetus. We've done generational studies in mice and have found that all of the mice that have been delivered with the by administering the exosome therapeutic, um, there isn't any there aren't any developmental issues that they have. But tocolytics can give you developmental issues, and
Okay.
so when we get into clinical trials, that's where we're really going to find out how incredible these exosomes are. And I don't know if you've seen, but there are companies, who are looking at exosomes and have done those preclinical or those phase 1 clinical trials. And that's what tells you safety. If you can inject this into a healthy human being and nothing happens, then you can move on to the next phase in the clinical trial. And there are multiple companies who have successfully performed phase one clinical trials without any adverse effects.
Interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. So you guys are pretty much just starting out fresh. Like
Hmm.
that's those are exciting times, but also kind of nerve in a way. I
Oh
can
my gosh, it's so
see that.
stressful.
Yeah. So okay. So with karma, right? Preterm birth is the starting point, right? Do you see any other conditions that your platform and the company can target with these types of exosomes?
Yes. So preterm birth is our starting point. We really want to dedicate some time to women's health. So we've looked at other inflammatory disorders that happen. Endometriosis is a big one. Um, we can't like we can't say, oh yeah, next one is going to be endometriosis because again, well, we may need to pivot, but we have strong data that shows that our therapeutic can target, you know, endometriosis and at least help some of those symptoms. We're looking at other inflammatory disorders, and it doesn't even need to be in women. We're our, we want to help women's health. Like we want to focus on that for now, because we do think it is understudied and underrepresented. But there are other diseases that could benefit from a an anti-inflammatory molecule that can be delivered to the target and not cause a bunch of adverse effects. And that's the goal, is to develop um, the safest therapeutics that can help humanity. That sounds a little cliche, but you know, when I started graduate school, I my goal was to find something that made a difference. And this drug that was created and developed by the lab, it really can make a difference, and it can change a lot of people's quality of life. We just need to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for yeah, I was looking at endometriosis. It's a
Hmm.
condition resulting from the appearance of endometrial tissue outside the uterus and causing pelvic pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really didn't know much about that actually. And then you're saying that this could be a potential other treatment
Hmm.
that karma can help women?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Um, there are a lot of women who struggle with endometriosis, and the treatments out there, usually hormone treatments, and those come with a lot of side effects as well. And sometimes they need surgery to go in and take that tissue out. And if we can give them a drug that isn't a hormone, that is safe, that's targeted, we could really help these women have better quality of life. Because I've never had endometriosis, but I've heard women talk about how painful it is, and the I hate pain. So if there's anything I can do to keep other women from having to go through that, I that would be fantastic.
No, I totally agree. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't like pain.
Yeah, right. Who really does?
Well, I mean, I don't know. There's some crazy people here. But yeah, I totally agree. So good. So okay. So now I understand, the position where you guys are currently at, preclinical trial. You guys are looking for investors and people to essentially help, obviously grow this. And yeah, we all know that going through clinical trials and going through that process is time consuming. It's
Mhm.
super expensive.
Yeah.
So obviously you guys have, you have a lot of ambition, you have a lot of passion. Um, w- how do you guys manage the clinical safety and like the regulatory part of it as well? Like that's something I'm sure another stressful part of it, right?
Yes.
And I'm,
Yeah.
I'm kind of, and I know we kind of briefly talked about it before we went live on the regulatory, and we're all learning as we go on the regulatory aspect. So
Yeah.
on the regulatory side, on my side, what I've learned as well um, is that And that's why I asked, like, where is it derived from, right? I was in the impression that you guys are collecting it from, autologous from the mother
Hmm.
or donor. And the regulatory on that is insane, right? And so,
Insane.
so now I can imagine now from a human embryonic kidney cells derived from there, right?
Hmm.
So how does that look like for you?
So regulatory is always going to be a challenge.
Yep.
Luckily, there are third parties who are experts in it. So we don't personally need to be an expert in regulatory and dealing with the FDA and the investigational new drug applications and dealing with all of that, all of those very necessary. I'm not trying to say they're unnecessary, but very challenging and complex areas to make sure that we, check all of their boxes.
Yes.
So, um, when it comes to that area, we're going to be working with a third party because I don't have the expertise and the team doesn't, and we don't want to chance it.
No, I totally agree. I mean, that's why you have different players, different roles in a business, right?
Hmm.
You are the scientist, you have the passion to do to move this forward,
Exactly.
and then you let regulatory people handle that
Yes,
side, right?
they can
Um,
deal with that stress.
I totally agree. And then, okay, good. So yeah, well, thank you. So before we get into like what your role is in karma, I would love to like hear a little bit more about that as well on the um on the scientific side of things, right?
Yes.
Regarding the exosomes, is there anything else that you would like to share that didn't ask?
Um, I mm,
We pretty much, I think,
not really,
a lot.
no. I
I just wanted to make sure if there's anything that I missed or anything else you want to share on there. So yeah, so what is your role in karma, right? So what do you oversee? What does an average day look like for Dr. Miller, right?
Oh man, what don't I do? So, as with any company that starts with an academic foundation, there's always going to be the balance between what the academics can do and what they can't do. And so, w- one of the reasons why the team reached out to me to help them start this company was because I am not tied into a university and there are challenges with starting a company. Granted, the university that they're working for is very excited and encouraging and doing everything they can to make this work for us. But there's still conflict of interest stuff that we need to be aware of to make sure. So right now, I'm doing everything. So I'm looking for investors. I'm creating, um, as the standard operating procedures for how we need to do certain things. Um, I make sure that the our LinkedIn page is up to date. I am Gosh, what else do I do? I like everything. There's everything. I have
You
a
work
list of
with that.
75 to-dos that and a lot of it is just reaching out to people and saying, "Hey, we have this really great product. Do you want to hear about it?" And a lot of cold calling. I never thought that I would do so much cold calling as a COO, but when you're the one who really wants to make this work and you're, the only one working there, everything falls on me. And I am excited to do it because I'm learning so much. I knew nothing about business, and now I know a little bit more, and it is frightening how complicated. Like science is complex. I think business is even more complex because you have to deal with people, and science you don't. And so I'm just learning so much about the business side of starting a new biotech company.
Wow, but that's that's a good thing, right? Because you're learning new skills, you're learning, and that's what makes us better. That's what makes us grow.
Hmm.
That's what removes us or takes us out of our comfort zone, right? And
Exactly.
so by getting out of our comfort zone, that's how we grow, and just not just in science but everywhere as a personal development, right? That's
Hmm.
that's amazing, and it's understandable for anyone starting a new business, a new venture. We have to do everything,
Right.
right? And we learn everything, and that's and
Mhm.
learn everything as we go. We're learning
Exactly.
regulatory. We're learning how to work with people, and then hopefully once you guys grow, then you will be able to you know hire a specific a salesperson or a
Hmm.
marketing person, right?
Yeah.
And grow from there. But then you have a perfect SOP. This gets more onto the business side of things, right? Now you have certain SOPs. You know now your quality, your standards on how you like certain things,
Hmm.
right? So that I think
Yep.
it's a necessity. It's necessary for a company to go through those because now whoever comes into work with you, this is how we do things, and this
Yep.
is what and I think that's a great
Right.
thing, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
uh, okay, so we discussed a little bit about regulatory. You have a third
Right.
party that is handling all that.
Hmm.
What are some challenges that you're facing in operational, right? In regulatory, you said that you kind of, third party that does that, and investor challenges in launching, this type of therapy.
Right. So, I don't know if you've monitored the pharma industry and the biotech industry, but it's not doing so well. Like
Hmm.
there's it's highs and lows, but there's a lot of layoffs happening. Investors are a little hesitant to invest, and so it's really convincing them. De-risking is the jargon. So I'm also learning that. I'm learning the business jargon. De-risking the investment has been the challenge for me. And I can preach, "It's safe, it's awesome, it's gonna work." I know it will because we have this preclinical data that backs it up, but, you know, asking someone to invest a lot of money into a company is very risky. Even if they're as rich as Elon Musk, it's still a risk to invest in a company because there is the chance of losing it. And people don't like to lose. And so you really need to make sure that your data is sound, your business side. And I had a meeting before I started talking with you today to learn all the gaps that we have in our organizational side, and that's probably been the biggest challenge for me is recognizing where we need to adjust, recognizing what needs to be done to fix things on the business side because I have a science background. I grew up in science, but then I moved to industry as a field applications person, which is a pseudo sales person, and that was all the business that I could bring to the table. And so the learning has been exponential, and the challenges of like remembering it, right? Because we have the capacity to remember things, but business was never interesting to me, and so I have to keep repeating
Yeah.
um it's the jargon, the words like cap tables and term sheets and all for to manage how to get an investor and make sure that they're well educated in everything that we're trying to sell them, basically.
Interesting. Yeah. You know, I think every business, has those challenges, right?
Hmm.
Putting it together, try to sell it, right? Well, not try to sell it, but try to bring investors in it that are,
Well, you're
you know,
selling to investors because they're
exactly.
buying something.
Yeah, exactly. So, every business goes through that, right? So the fact that
Hmm.
you're learning that is marvelous. And how do you like it now?
I do. I I look forward to it every morning. I'm like, "Oh, I have my to-do list. I can't wait to address it." And, "Oh, yay, I get to work in the data room today." And, "Oh, I need to research what a cap table is and how to design one. What's a pro forma? What's a P&L? Oh, I get to do math. Yay!" So I try to find the joy in each thing. That's spreadsheets.
Yeah.
I have, like, like 100 spreadsheets, and each one is something completely different. But I love working in Excel, and I'm learning how to make more complex Excel spreadsheets too. So transferable skills,
Yeah.
definitely something I'm learning.
Yeah, well, you definitely have a great attitude in, learning it and looking at, the glass what half full,
Half
right?
full. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but and then also I wanted to touch up on a good point that you made is, recognizing where the gaps are, right? Recognizing how to improve. a lot of owners, including myself at the very beginning of my career, I didn't know that, right? I was just going, and I didn't take a step or two steps back to reflect and see what I was missing, right? And
Hmm.
so the fact that you've recognized that and you're applying and you're doing that, that speaks volume, right?
Hmm.
Because that's a big step. That's something good. I personally think so, right?
Well,
Uh,
by recognizing it, I'm able to bring in people onto the team as advisors who actually know how to do this and know what they're doing. And the thing that you have to remember when you're doing something like this is the ego has to go out the window. You're learning from them, they're guiding you, they're taking time out of their very important day to tell you, well, I think you should do it this way. And you kind of made this one a little wonky. Let's try it a different way. And you have to listen because they know more. We go through this with my 5-year-old. He challenges us on everything, and we're like, we've lived longer. We know you need to just trust me. And I place my trust in the people who I have brought in to help me build this company to what I know it can be. Because it's more than just a therapeutic, and my co-founders will kill me if I don't say this, but we're more than just a therapeutic company. We also want other people, other scientists to be able to leverage the unique capabilities of exosomes. And so we offer a service side as well to help them understand exosomes better, to help them create their own exosome-based therapeutic. And then we also have a drug design software algorithm that we can leverage and extrapolate for women who are trying to use drugs in pregnancy. And we've created an algorithm um, to help um, extrapolate into pregnancy to see if it'll be safe, to see if it'll cross the placenta or the blood-brain barrier. And then we have ways to test for that using other other techniques. And so with that new FDA 3.0, where you can use AI now, AI computation, we're also dabbling into that and using our capabilities that we use to develop the drug that we have now and helping others to achieve the same type of satisfaction of designing a drug, testing it computationally, and then being able to test it further. Again, de-risking it for them because a lot of labs don't have the capabilities. An exosome, to isolate exosomes from cell culture media is a very long, tedious process. And if you don't have the expertise nor the equipment, then it can become very expensive. And
wow.
it can become just a dream and you can't actually harness it. So we want other people to have the opportunity to also look at exosomes as a potential therapeutic.
Interesting. Um, yeah, so I wanted to go over, what are like some ethical responsibilities? Like how do you navigate risk, testing, and patient-centered care when you're going? Because you guys are, relatively new. So how are you ethically responsibly for that?
We lean on people. Well, first of all, the ethical side is like, I'm not going to put this in a person if I don't think it's safe, right? But we're
Right.
also working with clinicians who know how to maintain the ethics of doing a clinical trial and of maintaining that standard of care that we want to be known for, right? So, a, a lot of it, you know, again, we're still early, so we haven't even kind of really stepped into that world yet. We've
Yeah.
talked with some clinicians about doing, phase 1 clinical trials. Um, but, again, funding and personnel is required to make that happen. And so we're just talking to clinicians and trying to understand what goes into it, what kind of documentation is required, how do we make sure that we do things correctly so that we don't have to come back and do it again, right? And so we're relying on experts. There's a lot of trust that is happening with between myself and our co-founders and the people we trust who have done this before. They've done clinical trials before, so they should know the ethics behind it and the standard of care that's required to make sure that we're doing it right. And so, um, and that's kind of been what we've been doing is talking to clinicians and making sure that the people we're bringing in know what they're doing because they've done it before.
Okay. Oh, and at the beginning of our conversation, we discussed on how preterm birth and women's health is kind of like understudied, you said.
Hmm.
You know, have you seen anything change? Like, do you see more studies now, or is it still kind of, understudied, underfunded? Do you see anything changing in the next couple of years or current situation?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's becoming less of a faux pas to talk about, right? Women have been excluded from clinical trials. They've been, and pregnant women especially, because like, who nobody wants to touch that, right? Because you're dealing with two patients and
Yeah,
hormones and the unknown. Because pregnancy is such a magical, almost, but complex type of situation
sense.
with a woman. It
Yeah,
is, but also with non-pregnant women they've been excluded from clinical trials because we're also complex. Um, I hate to sound cliche again,
well,
but
it's
we have our hormones change throughout the month, right? Our physiology changes slightly, um, given just the time of the month, and that's a huge variable that can play into how a person responds to a drug,
yeah,
right? And so it's easier to just use men who are pretty straightforward. um, when it comes to the physiology, they don't have those big fluctuations like women do with hormones. Like sometimes we have estrogen just going through us like crazy, and sometimes we have progesterone. And though just those hormone changes can change the way a drug affects us. And so that variable makes women's health so complex to study and kind of again a risk to put them into your clinical trial because what if you get something wonky? And you're like, well, was that because, like, where was she in her cycle? Or, does she have endometriosis? Does she have PCOS? And, like, what kind of crazy thing is her physiology doing to her that's making her react so strangely to this drug,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it's easier to talk about now than it was even 15 years ago because
Why do you?
people are now,
Yeah,
I think people are becoming more outspoken and more comfortable with it. um, the mindset has evolved over time, which has been fantastic. I remember getting on LinkedIn years ago, and there wouldn't be a lot of stuff about preterm birth, like March of Dimes or different women's health organizations. But now my feed is flooded with it. And yes, I've been following more and becoming more involved in the community, but even trying to be involved in the community before, I wasn't really getting the full picture. But people are becoming more comfortable with it. Women are speaking out. There are many, many, many people who um, are now pushing for it because they understand that women are part of an important part of, happy
life.
babies, life. Yeah, everything. So now that we're 50% and it's acknowledged that we're 50%, that is going to help push it forward.
Yeah, well, I also, yeah, you made some really strong points there. I also think that patients and people are more aware of new technology, new medicine, right? I personally think I mean, maybe because I'm in regenerative medicine and I'm also
Hmm.
like in it, right? Like what I was telling you, like fish they don't know they're in water, right? Because we're in it. We
Yeah,
all these terms for us is easy. We know it like the palm of our hands.
right,
So maybe because of that, but we've seen it. Like if you look at, for example, how many regenerative or stem cell therapies
right.
are opening up, and there's so many of them, right? Um,
Tons.
Patients are now looking for anti-aging, holistic, functional
Hmm.
medicine, right? They don't want surgery. They don't want, they're looking for other alternative, holistic medicine, right?
Hmm.
And so I think that also has a huge part in how people are thinking and how they're looking for treatments nowadays. That's what I see. So I think that's a huge
Exactly.
effect and also advantage for us as that we're in the medical field, right? And one point too, also that
Right.
I never thought of, so simple, but you're treating two patients, a fetus and a baby
Right.
and the mom, right? And I when you brought it up the first time, I was like, that makes sense. That's true, right? It's so simple, right? I didn't think of it.
Right.
and and I can
Right.
understand.
And some people don't look at it like that.
No, no, I never thought about it like that until you mentioned it. And I was like, that's so
Yeah.
true. And then when you think about, giving the women and the fetus a drug or a treatment option, there's a lot of risk involved that maybe a lot of people don't want to kind of get in it because it's risky. And what if this
Right.
happens, now I'm affecting two people rather than one, right? So
Right.
when you look at it from that perspective, I can understand why maybe it's underfunded or people don't want to touch it or
Right.
experiment in that, right? So I
Yeah.
can totally understand that.
Mhm.
Those are very good
It's
points.
it's an uphill battle because there isn't a really good track record for safe drugs in pregnancy. Um, like there was the thalidomide, right? They didn't do the correct testing, so they didn't know that it would cause. It was used to treat.
Never heard
I'm
of that.
probably is that what it was called? They used it to treat morning sickness in women back in the 60s, I want to say, and it ended up causing birth defects.
Tha- Thalidomide, something like that.
Thalidomide, yeah. Oh, I
Thalidomide.
did get it right.
Mhm. Yeah, it was in the 1960s. In the early 1960s, the primary drug for morning sickness was thalidomide, marketed
Hmm.
as safe for pregnant women, but infamous for causing severe birth defects, leading to
Hmm.
bans and stricter regulations. Another common treatment was Bendictin, a
I
combination
don't
of
remember.
monoamine, yeah, vitamin B6, also prescribed for nausea, though later pulled due to safety concerns linked to thalidomide fallout and its own adverse reports. I did not know
Right.
about that. Yeah,
So, I'm the regulations weren't as strict as they are now, but I mean, they tried something and it failed horrifically. So who wants to be the one to start that again? Right? That's a scary thing to follow, but we are confident. We've done the testing. We know that this is safe. Other companies are looking at exosomes and they've gone through phase one clinical trials and they've shown that exosomes are safe in humans. It is a risk. It is a risk, but we're willing to take it because we believe in it. We know it can work. And it's not even a belief. We know it works. And now we
yeah,
just need to get it out there.
get it out there. Yeah, and okay, yeah. So what does success look like for Karma in the next 5 years? I know that's a big question.
That's
You
a
know,
big question. You know how much pivoting is going to happen in the next 5 years?
I'm sure
There's going to be a lot of changes. Well, ideally, 5 years, we get our phase one and we're starting our phase two clinical trial. I would love for that to be the story. If you ever do a follow up with me in
we sure
five
will.
years, I would love to be talking about phase two clinical trials or some sort of collaboration that's happening with another drug company to help expedite it um, and make it available faster. But yeah, that's what success. So we'd have funding, we'd have a company, we'd have um, success on the therapeutic side, we'd have new drugs in the pipeline. And I don't want to do what other companies have done, where they spread themselves too thin with too many drug products. And I really want to stay focused and get this one through to the finish line. And so I don't want to start a clinical trial with another drug product before we get this one all the way through. So then we'll have our drug, we'll be doing our research, but then we'll also have customers who have been successful on their own with their own ideas with exosomes um, and their ability to look not just at pregnancy, but in whatever field of study they're doing. Because, exosomes are universal. They can be used in vaccines, they can be used in cancer, they can be used with stem cells. And so it would be really great to have these success stories with, other customers who have been able to um, show the value and the, perseverance of an exosome in their therapeutics.
Yeah, no, we will definitely do a follow-up, and I don't think we have to wait 5 years for that, but
We're
and
gonna
then
need to wait a little bit longer. We'll need to wait some time because it, I want things to move fast. My old mentor, he had this expectation of like everything. We'd started a test like a Western blot in the morning, and he'd come by in a couple of hours and be like, "Okay, what did it say?" And we're like, "Well, not done yet." So, so I have that ingrained in me of that instant gratification, and so this has been teaching me patience. But it is moving slower than I would like because I'm still learning and growing with the company as well. And so my goal, I'm looking like next quarter, what do I want done? Like who do I want to have talked to? What investors did I want to start a conversation with to make sure that everyone else who's passionate about this is also involved
yeah. What excites you the most about the future in women's health, I would say?
in women's health. The conversations. You know, I I started in an IVF clinic and then I moved to another women's health research lab. Um, and I remember going to my very first Society for Reproductive Investigation meeting, and it was pretty small. And then 4 years later, it doubled in size. The number of researchers who attended, it was huge. I'm excited for that kind of growth in women's health because I think people care. They just didn't know what to do. How do you address something so complicated? Where do you start? And I think they're now understanding it doesn't matter where you start as long as you start. The first step is the hardest, and now you just need to keep moving, one foot in front of the other to help push whatever field of study you're doing when it comes to women's health. Because there's no wrong, there's no stupid question. And so there's not going to be a stupid answer. Anything that you ask and you can try to find an answer is going to move the women's health initiative further. And that's what I'm excited for. I'm excited to see what amazing research comes out of the new organizations that are popping up, the nonprofits that are helping fund the research. Because there wasn't a lot back, when I was applying for grants, but now there's new ones popping up every day. And there are even conferences dedicated to women's health companies. And it doesn't even need to be therapeutics, but it can be like doctors who are dedicated to women's health and conferences that are dedicated to sharing that information. That's what I'm excited for. And I think that that's going to help really push this initiative in a positive direction.
Yeah, I agree. One thing too is having a mindset shift because it all
Hmm.
starts with mindset, you know. Um, and that's awesome that you're seeing a lot of conversations and people are more aware. But it also I'm sure it also has to do with what we just spoke about. You know how people are looking for different alternatives, right? More of a
Hmm.
holistic approach, right? Um, and people are speaking up, which I'm happy about.
Hmm.
Uh, what is one message that you want clinicians to take away from this entire episode?
Oh, geez. One message? Can't
Or
they
a
just
couple
take
of
the whole
messages. I
thing?
have some time. A couple of messages. What do you want? Some key topics. Some like what's some takeaways that you want them to take away?
Oh man, that
That's
we're
a
working on it. We're working really hard. We
yeah
want to get, we are working just as hard as you, even though you can't really see it happening because research does go at its own pace.
yeah.
But we are working really hard to get you what you need to make sure that your patients are supported.
That's a bang. So
Mic drop.
yeah. Well, if there's anything else that you would like to share, and the podcast with,
I do have one anecdote that I would like to share.
okay.
Because this hits home for people who are struggling with, their research, they've hit a wall, or they they don't realize how impactful their work is. So I told you I worked at Boston IVF, and that's how I got involved in sort of women's health. A few years later, I was working at a company called 908 Devices, and one of the ladies I worked with had gone through IVF treatment. And I was talking to her about, oh, I worked at Boston IVF, and I developed these, the spit kit and the salivary tests to monitor hormones throughout your cycle. And she was like, "That was you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I started that. I did the clinical trial. I really pushed that initiative, and got that up and running." And she told me, so that was in 2011 that I started that. She went through IVF in 2015. And again, I think in 2016, she went through two cycles and had two successful children, two successful pregnancies that resulted in having babies. And she used the salivary um, testing that I had developed. And the thing that stuck with me was when she told me that even though you're not there and you're not seeing what's happening, your work matters. And so I want all the scientists who are stuck in a rut or are frustrated with what's going on with the NIH and the funding. Remember that your work matters. And it doesn't matter if it's happening slowly or really quickly, or you have to repeat that experiment for the millionth time because it was just off a little bit and you want to make sure that it's perfect. Your work matters. Everyone cares, even if they don't realize it. Your work matters.
Wow, very powerful. Very
Thank
powerful.
you.
It's yeah, it's I'd like to add some to that. So it's I'm not sure if you've seen these images of like you have the sea level and then you have like an iceberg, right? And you have obviously all this ice under, the water which no one can see, right? And it's usually that ice at the bottom is usually way bigger than the little peak on top of the, you know,
Yeah,
so all the hard work, and not just in science, but in business, no one sees all that hard work, long
right.
hours, stress, tears,
Hmm.
that go into work, right? And then once they see
Hmm.
that little tip of the iceberg on top, everyone just sees that and they don't understand all the work and everything that went
Hmm.
into it, right? And so, thank you very much for sharing that. That is something, inspiring, and I hope someone can listen to this and really get inspired and move forward because that's what we need. We need to help each other off and help each
Yeah,
other out and move forward. That
exactly. Yeah,
okay,
be inspirations for each other.
exactly. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Miller. It was a pleasure having this awesome
Yeah,
conversation, and I hope we get to do this again. Hopefully, not in five
yeah, me
years.
too. Yes, I'll fix my technical issues, so it'll be a
No,
little smoother.
no problem. All right. Bye, guys. Thank you. You have a beautiful day.